Welcome to Turbanology, a series of events hosted by the Sikh group here at Ernst Young to celebrate Vaisakhi. I'm very honored and excited to be given the opportunity to have a part to play in hosting this exhibition. I've always been willing and happy to discuss why I wear turban with anyone who asks, from the pupils at my daughter's school to my colleagues here at Ernst Young. In my humble view, educating others on Sikhism and the role the turban has within it is the best method we have of explaining our religion and its core values to the general public. This is why I also believe that when you have a look around the exhibition, you will notice that the values of Sikhs are very much the values of society of today. I was very lucky to grow up with close friends from a variety of different backgrounds, cultures, and religions. We really enjoyed each other's company and supported as well as learned from one another. But what still binds us together is how similar our values are. My hope in supporting this exhibition is to give that opportunity to others, to celebrate diversity, to expand their knowledge, whilst also recognizing our similarities. Wearing a turban is a statement, whether one likes it or not. You stand out in a crowd. You are an ambassador for your religion. Your behavior is visible to all. People notice you, they notice what you do, and they'll probably remember you for longer too. They come to you for help. As envisaged by the 10th Sikh Guru, Sri Guru Gobind Singh Ji. To me, that's a daily reminder from our gurus to be an active part of society, to play an active role in society and to uphold its values. And that's what this exhibition's all about, celebrating the turban. To quote Ramsey Moore, who was the visiting lecturer to the University of Punjab in 1913, the wonderful things were the turbans. Vivid orange, emerald green, rose pink, purple, magenta, peacock blue. To end, I'd like to thank everybody for their hard work in making this exhibition and event a success, and I'll now hand you over to Jai Singh Sohal, who will be taking us through the rest of this evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, yes, I'm your host for this evening, and I'll be taking you through the proceedings and giving you the opportunity to question the various guests who will be speaking today. I'm also the director, as you've heard, of the Turbanology project. So you could say I'm here with two hats on, two turbans. I'll let you guys decide. It's a pleasure to bring you the Turbanology Sikhs Unwrapped exhibition in central London. It's the first time it's been exhibited in the capital, as well as the first time it's being hosted by a corporate body. So a special week indeed. In particular because the week culminates with the Sikh festival of Vaisakhi, where we commemorate the founding of the Sikh Brotherhood, or Khalsa Brotherhood. The creation of the Khalsa gave the Sikh community in 1699 a clear identity as a sovereign nation. A Sikh is distinct, a Sikh is unique, and the turban symbolises this, letting the whole world know who is a Sikh and who lives in accordance with the principles laid out by the 10 Gurus. So this exhibition, this venue, and this occasion means a lot. We're also marking the 3rd birthday of Turbanology, a project which began in 2009 as the response to a question I had been asking myself as a journalist ever since the London bombings took place. Namely, why have Sikhs become the victims of mistaken identity? Being confused for Islamists because of the ignorance that's built up over who wears a turban, and more importantly, the reasons why they are worn. The answer I found was in a 2008 study by academics in Australia, which found that seeing someone with a turban subconsciously led individuals to have a heightened sense of threat and danger. The reason was the profile of jihadists such as Osama bin Laden, and the Taliban, who are always seen to be wearing a turban for cultural reasons. And the phenomenon became known as the Turban Effect. And so the documentary Turbanology After 7/7 uncovered how the strong symbol of the turban had become connected to fear and terror. It sought to create knowledge and awareness of the turban and to dispel the myths that have built up around it and its wearers. Since that initial production, the Turbanology brand has branched out into books and a touring exhibition, which you've had the chance to see outside. It's the first to explore the traditions, the stories, and the styles of the Sikh turban for a popular mainstream audience, and one which Ernst Young have shown great leadership in hosting and creating dialogue about the issues facing the Sikh community, whether they be domestic, physical, verbal abuse, or foreign harassment at airports or in public venues. So in hosting our exhibition, EY have been pivotal in a new Turbanology commission featuring prominent Sikhs speaking out about what their turban identity means to them. All over the UK, Sikh men and women tie their turbans not because they have to, but because it connects them to their faith, their culture, and their identity. This is particularly important for British Sikhs who feel such a strong connection to this Indian subcontinent, a rising power economically and politically. We've brought this all together under the theme of this evening, how Sikhs contribute to prosperity in Britain. And our fantastic panel of guests, which I'll be introducing this evening, will leave you in no doubt that what has enabled the Sikh community to grow from strength to strength in Britain is our sense of who we are. Our faith, our language, our culture, our hard work ethos, self-belief, and yes, ability to make lots and lots of money. The way we stand out, the way we aim to reach higher always, while not forgetting our seva or selfless service to help those in need. The Sikh ethos is surely the best business solution for Britain, and this evening you'll be hearing exactly why. So we're going to move on to introduce our first panel speaker. Peter Verdi was born and raised in Birmingham, and if you're from Birmingham like me, you'll know that Birmingham is the centre of the universe. Peter is a founding partner of BNS Property and has interests in numerous other businesses. He's had an invaluable impact through his commitment and dedication in supporting worldwide causes, and aspires to donate 50% of his wealth to charitable causes. As such, he set up the Sardar Jagat Singh Charitable Trust in India to carry out cataract operations and sponsor children through from primary education in the hope that this will lead to future scholarships. Furthermore, his UK-based donations and contributions are made through the Verdi Foundation. He's currently the first Sikh patron on the board of the English National Opera and sits on the UK Philanthropy Board of Coutts & Co. Private Banking. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Peter Singh Verdi.
Good evening, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thanking Ernst Young for hosting this wonderful event, allowing the Sikh community to showcase their contribution to prosperity, how the prosperity in Britain. Special thanks to Dr. Vince Cable, Dr. Surinder Handel, who both I am in awe of and I admire a lot. A big thanks to Amarjit Singh, Jay Sohal for their hard work and their efforts for putting this whole event together. Jay's done half of the work of basically telling you about my business, which started 18 years ago, very humbly, small property company. Today, we manage around £4 billion worth of real estate around the continent. I run a PE company, private equity. We are in a real wide range of businesses, insurance, spread betting, sports personality, healthcare, renewable energy. I sit on the Coutts Advisory Board for philanthropy, which is basically advising people how to give their money away correctly and sensibly, opposed to just writing a check and taking it off their conscience that they've done their bit. I sit on the National English Opera, which is I think I was the first Sikh to sit on that board. It's one of the oldest establishments in the United Kingdom. Jay approached me about 6 months ago to do a talk on how Sikhs have contributed to prosperity. And I thought about this, and I put myself in this position and looked around our parents, our grandparents who've come here, and the most important thing that stood out was their faith. They believe in Vaheguru. They believe in faith. Doesn't matter what happens, have faith, stick by it. And the basic fundamentals was Naam Japo, Kirt Kamao, Vand Shako. Say God's name, do an honest living, share with mankind, find good in people. And these values, the values of Sikhi, have helped me in my day-to-day business, and I've used these fundamentals to progress my business and looking at people equally, treating the opposite sex and using the quality to look at the woman and look at any race or any caste equally and treating them as the same when I'm doing business. What inspires me the most is when I have non-Sikhs or non-Indians come up to me and say, we've just had langar at the Gurdwara. And I was in Sri Harmandir Sahib and I spoke to Bhai Sahib ji and I said, "Tusi kinnak langar ithe vartaunde hain? How much langar do you do on a daily basis?" 100,000 a day they serve approximately, every day, free to anybody, any race, any religion, any caste, per day. It's one of the largest, it is the largest free kitchen in the world. And we followed this through to Britain, America, all around the world we followed this through, thanks to our gurus, our religion, our teaching. 1849 was the first Sikh that came to the United Kingdom, Maharaja Dalip Singh. Early 1950s, around about, we had masses of immigration that came to the United Kingdom. Skilled workers, farmers, unskilled workers, professionals. When they landed here, they were offered unskilled jobs, jobs that were not in their skill set. And there was a condition attached to these jobs. Remove your turbans and remove your beards. It's a shame. That was the case then, it's not now. But even then, facing all of that, our parents, our grandparents had faith in the country and in what they've come here to do. Sikhs contributed to 2 world wars for Britain, and there was a major contributor for that. Last year, a couple of years ago, I was invited to escort Prince Wales to Neuve-Chapelle, where Sikhs contributed in the First World War. It's quite disturbing, just the fact that they died for nothing to do with them. They was just here in Britain, volunteers died there. And they didn't get an official grave, nothing at all whatsoever, besides a memorial, and after long fighting to get this memorial. But what the Sikhs do have to date, and what my researchers told me, we have 6 Victoria Crosses, and I think many more to come with the amount of soldiers we have in the British Army. The Sikh religion might be the youngest religion in the world, might be the smallest religion in the world. We're circular 30 million, growing about 1.8% per annum compared to other religions. Why are we successful? Why are we successful and we still keep under the radar? We've accepted Britain to be our home. We respect the culture. We respect their beliefs, unlike other religions. And we respect other people's beliefs, and we respect other people's culture. That's the beauty of being a Sikh, is to accept and let people live around you. Sikhs are the second wealthiest community in the United Kingdom after Jews. An average of 220,000 per household, which when you look at 30 million around the world, growing at 1.8, and being the second wealthiest in the United Kingdom, I think that's something remarkable when we go down on the wealth side. When we look around us today, notable Sikhs, and mentioning a few, Judge Mota Singh QC, Rabinder Singh QC, Professor Pyara Singh Gill, founder of fiber optics, Tom Singh of New Look, Dr. Surinder Handel, who you'll be hearing very shortly, Monty Panessa, Gurinder Chadha, Satnam Dhillon, Professor Tajinder Verdi, and the list goes on and on and on and on. There's something I'd like to share with the audience today. We've decided, a group of 4 people, 4 Sikhs, including myself, making 5 of us, is to set up a fund just for Sikhs. And we're not doing this because we don't like Hindus, we don't like Christians. This is just for Sikhs worldwide. Sikhs who have an idea, Sikhs who want advice, and if they have an idea and it's cutting edge, we will finance that idea. We will support them. If they need advice, we will give them advice. Maybe we can't assist them in any way, we will just give them some form of guidance. And these are leading Sikh businessmen who've decided to do this, to help the Sikh community. And this is worldwide. We have leaders in the Sikh community. We have Gurdwara, we have all sorts of institutes, but we just felt there was a gap in the market. And we're not doing this to earn any money. We're not taking a shareholding, or we're not becoming Dragon's Den here where we take majority of the stake. We are just doing it to support the business. We'll give them a soft loan and they would go away and continue their idea. And with the grace of God, they will prosper. We are leaders in our field, and above all, we have faith in the Almighty Vaheguru. And this is how Sikhs contribute in Britain. Thank you very much.
We come to our second speaker, Dr. Surinder Handel, who has over 25 years of multifaceted international business management experience. She currently runs her own consultancy business, offering a portfolio of services in the corporate responsibility and sustainable development fields to global business, not-for-profit and public sector organisations. She sits on the advisory board of the MBA at the Cass Business School in London and is an advisor to the board of trustees for Project Mosaic, an Anglo-American educational charity set up to promote interfaith and intercultural tolerance. So please do give a warm welcome to Dr. Surinder Handel.
I think it is appropriate that we should take some pride in and celebrate our economic achievements. After all, we worked very hard for it. It's equally important for us to take a moment to reflect and recognise what lies behind those achievements. When Jay asked me to talk about how Sikhs contribute to prosperity in Britain, so it was an opportunity for me to sort of reflect on my own experiences as a Sikh businesswoman, but also this was a wonderful opportunity to stand back and reflect on, generally, on why I believe the Sikhs are so successful. So why are so many Sikhs able to contribute so well? And what are the characteristics that we share that drive us and make us and succeed in what we do? Very simply, I believe it's a combination of entrepreneurial and a pioneering spirit, and our values and tenets, our moral and cultural DNA that drive us. And I think this is a common theme this evening, is our sort of the values that we share. And I think in the current debate around responsible business management and ethical corporate behavior, and around how we can make business an even smarter engine for our country's economic growth, this is very relevant. Our values are shaped by our upbringing, our family values, but above all, by our shared code of conduct, our teachings, and our faith. And as both Amarjit, Jay, and Peter have alluded, we share some very common and enduring values which guide all aspects of our daily lives. Values such as courage, both moral and physical courage, our tenacity, integrity, compassion, courtesy, our humor in adversity, loyalty, strong sense of duty, equality, fair play, justice, humility, and civic responsibility. But above all, I think SAVOR probably defines us the most. It's that selfless and unconditional commitment to the well-being of community. We're reminded of that every time we say the Ardas. we actually end that ardas with a supplication for the welfare of all. So it's just a daily reminder for us. So how does this, our code of conduct and values, matter to creating a successful business life? I believe they help us make the right choices. They make it easy for us to understand that business is an integral part of our society, that business has a social dimension that is hard to ignore, a binding social contract with the communities in which we do business. Our notion of seva demands that we work towards the common good of all. That in turn puts us in a very good position to understand that if we behave responsibly, doing the right things in the right way at the right time, with ourselves, our employees, our customers, our suppliers, our communities, our planet, for that matter, we can create the virtuous circles that lead to long-term success. We can create prosperity that is not short-lived, nor is it too one-dimensional, but it is rich in every way. Our values, particularly those that advocate selflessness and keeping our egos under control, also mean that most Sikh business, men and women I have come across, tend to be very modest. We have some extremely big, successful Sikh-led businesses and some very influential and talented Sikhs in global businesses. Many in turn put those business skills, as Peter has just related, to good use in civil society and into voluntary community service. We also have hundreds of small and medium-sized thriving Sikh businesses up and down the country. But we tend to keep our success to ourselves. That is not to say that we all make a virtue of living frugally or shy away from the odd display of some well-earned affluence. But as a business tribe, we tend not to hit the deadlines. And I think as business people, we can be a bit less reticent about our approach to business. Why? Because in a world where all business is considered bad, and all businessmen tarred with the same brush as being fundamentally malevolent, in a totally skewed and emotionally charged debate on responsible business behavior, it is important that we, as Sikh businessmen, lend some balance. How can we do that? Very simply by acting as role models in the way we run our own businesses, especially as guides and mentors for the next generation of business leaders. And Sikh Networks is a perfect example of the next generation of business leaders. And using the insights that we have gained over time, over the years, to look around the corner, build some foresight to take the lead. Our Sikh values and our pioneering spirit make it easy for us to do business in any field, in any market, and we can thrive anywhere. The Sikh diaspora is pretty impressive. There's probably not a single country in the world where you will not find a Sikh. And having spent a great deal of my own time working and living in many countries across the planet, I feel there is some truth in that. Our commitment to seva and a strong sense of civic responsibility also mean we assimilate well into any community we make our home in. We tend to knuckle down and just get on with it. So we have the cultural DNA to be prosperous. Now, I recognize that all I have said so far has probably come across as a rule, and I recognize there are some exceptions. But we have much to be proud of. However, I don't think we can rest on our laurels, because we do have a tough decade or so ahead of us as a nation. As British Sikhs, we can and should put our pioneering and entrepreneurial DNA to even better use. Not just go into new markets or businesses for our current product lines, but also create new areas of growth, enter into new fields. Because it's actually a matter of fact, the society faces challenges, there's climate change, pressures on natural resources, there's third-age employment and longevity issues, there is youth unemployment, urban degeneration, and so on. Now, all of these present business opportunities. We need to put more emphasis on innovation, more effort into how we involve the next generation. I personally went into the technology and pharmaceutical sectors partly because I was inspired by Britain's leadership in technological and industrial innovation, and partly as a business strategist. The new opportunities these disciplines opened up for society were exciting for me. I wanted to work in sectors where I could see a genuine connection between the business and the social and the ability to generate a positive social, economic, and environmental impact. With over 25 years in the global telecommunications businesses, I have certainly seen that impact. But I've also seen the UK slip behind other nations as we become more enamored with service industries, to the detriment of our manufacturing edge, through marginalization of the sciences and the engineering disciplines in and outside of universities, of our ability to invent and innovate. With an overemphasis on academic achievement, we've also seen the status of practical, technical, and vocational learning slip. So I'd like to see many more Sikh inventors, more innovators, and more entrepreneurs to follow the lead of some of our top Sikh scientists. Peter mentioned some of them. Engineers and businessmen to go into technology and engineering fields. Not follow the herd, but carve out new business niches for themselves, including some in social enterprises which put more emphasis on vocational skills, because I believe we do have the ability, the capability, and the attitude to be able to do that, to bring in more of the community into that circle. It's imperative that we do not sideline our youngsters. We can give them the opportunity to shine and have self-worth and self-reliance because we can tap into their ingenuity and creativity. And in doing so, I think they can help us and themselves shape and influence the next wave of prosperity in Britain. Thank you for letting me share my thoughts with you, and thank you very much.
We move now on to the keynote element of today's event, how Sikhs have contributed to prosperity in Britain. And I'd like to introduce to the stage possibly the most ideal person in this audience to be introducing our keynote speaker. James Close is a partner at EY Government Services. He focuses on the interface between the public and the private sectors and works with senior civil servants in government and has frequently been involved with presenting advice to ministers. He's currently leading EY's work as financial advisor to the government's current energy review. So please give a warm welcome to James Close.
It's my great honour to introduce to you the Right Honourable Dr. Vince Cable MP, the Secretary of State for Business, Innovation and Skills, who's going to be our guest speaker this evening, and to welcome you, Secretary of State, to our office here at 1 More London Place for this event, which of course is launching the special week-long programme of events to celebrate the 313th anniversary of the creation of Khalsa Brotherhood, entitled Turbanology at Vaisakhi. This event is part of Ernst Young's commitment to diversity and inclusiveness, which is one of our priorities, not only because it's the right thing for us as a business to do for our people, but it's also a major benefit to us as we seek to recruit and retain the very best talent and to build great teams that can serve our clients most effectively. Our office here is a great example of diversity and inclusiveness in action. More than 1/3 of our business comes from international clients operating in the UK, and in this building alone, which is the largest UK office EY office in the world, our people cover more than 60 different languages. The Sikh community is a very important part of our diversity and complements our dynamic Indian network with close links to our Indian sub-area, the market leader on the subcontinent. The Secretary of State has had a very distinguished career prior to joining the coalition government's cabinet in May 2010 as the first Liberal Democrat Secretary of State for Business since Walter Runicam, the first Viscount Runicam of Doxford, no less, who was made President of the Board of Trade in 1914. Dr. Cable has worked as Treasury Finance Officer for the Kenyan government, lectured in economics at Glasgow University, and worked for the Diplomatic Service in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and also the Overseas Development Institute. After that, he worked as Special Advisor on Economic Affairs for the Commonwealth Secretary-General, Sir Sonny Ramphal. From 1990, he went on to work in the private sector for Shell International and became the company's chief economist. He holds positions at Chatham House, Nuffield College, Oxford, and the Centre for the Study of Global Governance at the London School of Economics. Amongst all that, he found time to write a book on the financial crisis, The Storm, the world economic crisis and what it means, which I can thoroughly recommend to you as an excellent read. He also demonstrated his ballroom dancing skills on BBC's Strictly Come Dancing. We are delighted, Secretary of State, that you found time to address us here today on this evening's theme of how Sikhs contribute to prosperity in Britain. And no doubt the conversation has been well teed up by the panel, and I'm sure we'll be able to cover such issues as access to capital, reducing red tape, support for entrepreneurialism, and of course the potential benefits of business links. Secretary of State.
I think probably my most useful function is talking about the business world and my role as business secretary. And when I've finished, I'm very happy to take questions and answers following on from the discussion you've just had. But I thought before I do that, I'd say a little bit about what you've asked me to talk about, which is the role of the Sikh community in the UK and something on a more personal level. My first experience of dealing with the Sikh community was actually not in the UK. I like a lot of young people, I wanted to go and travel the world in my youth, and I set off overland and arrived in India, I think 1965. And the first Indian city I ever went to was Amritsar, and travelled in the Punjab around that time. And those of you of my generation, and there are a few, I think, will remember that at that time, the Punjab, and indeed India generally, was actually a very poor place. I mean, there was no India shining at that stage. It was struggling. The growth rate was no higher than the population. It was in trouble, really. And then something happened in the mid-60s, which was as important in many ways as the reforms which Manmohan Singh launched 20 years later, was the Green Revolution started in the Punjab. Yields soared in agriculture, and the Punjab became the breadbasket of India, and it provided the sort of jumping off point for a lot of the economic growth and indeed the business activities which the Punjab contributed to India. And I've been going backwards and forwards over the last half century for families and business reasons, and I've seen this extraordinary change which has taken place over that time. I think the second context in which I had dealings with the Sikh community at all was my first job, as was mentioned a few moments ago, was in Kenya. I worked for the Kenyatta government, and Kenya was shortly after independence, and those of you whose families came from East Africa will remember this. It still had many of the ugly features of the colonial system. And, the Europeans were up here, Asians were in the middle, Africans were down there, and schools and occupations were segregated in many ways. But despite that, certainly the Sikh community, together with Gujaratis, Ismailis, actually drove the Kenyan economy. I mean, actually made it work. A sort of combination of engineering skills and business was actually the motor that actually made that country work economically, and still does actually in many ways. And then I think thirdly, my next encounter was when I came back to live here, and the context in which it happened, I came back here with an Indian wife and young children in a very difficult times, and some of you will remember it. It was, we like to think of Britain now as being a very open, multicultural, tolerant place, but it certainly wasn't then. And there was a lot of discrimination, there was a lot of hostility, and the Sikhs, because they were so visible, were often very much on the receiving end of it. And so I became involved in many of the anti-discrimination activities at that time, and saw at first hand, the struggle that many people had. And of course, for the older generation here, they will remember that. And the right to wear a turban, it just didn't happen. It had to be fought for. And of course, we now accept it, but it was a struggle. So when we now look back, 40 years on, of course, an enormous amount has changed, and we now have a community, and many of you here, who are highly successful. And if you look at the statistics of educational achievement in schools and universities, a relatively small community that has vastly disproportionately contributed to the success of performance here, and then also in the professions and in business. And and I applaud that. It reflects an enormous amount of dedication and hard work and struggle in many cases against a lot of obstacles and prejudice. But I think the one thing which I just want to acknowledge, perhaps more than anything else, although clearly people have succeeded and that's great, but it's I think what I really admire more than anything else is the fact that perhaps more than any other minority community in the UK, the Sikhs have, on the one hand, been totally and utterly committed to involvement in British society and making a success of it, but at the same time having a very real sense of identity and maintaining it and pride in that identity and keeping those two things together. And I think in many ways that's what we're celebrating here today. But it's particularly important for me because part of my job is doing whatever I can to encourage business, entrepreneurship. The context in which we're operating. I have a slightly colourful way of describing it. I think, and I describe this in my book, that back in 2008, 2009, Britain had the economic equivalent of a heart attack. It was the most serious financial economic crisis of my lifetime, and indeed for going back for many, many years. And indeed, as you quoted history, I think one of my predecessors as a Liberal Secretary of State for Trade was Winston Churchill. You have to go back to that era before you get something comparable to what we have now. And it did immense harm. The collapse of the banking system, the bursting bubble in property, the recession that followed that, done a lot of harm. The country is now 10% down in economic terms, GDP terms, as compared with what it was before the crisis. But we're now rebuilding it. And it's got to be rebuilt on more secure foundations. And I think the two areas where we have to have growth in Britain, if we're not going to repeat the mistakes that led up to this crisis, one is looking outward, not building up an economy based on consumption and credit, but looking outward, exports, looking out to the world, and particularly the big emerging markets, of course, of which India is now one. And the other is business investment. We can't, grow out of an economic crisis by simply expanding the role of government. I mean, the government has a role to play, but you can't do it that way. It's got to come through the private sector, and it's got to come through investment, and therefore it's got to come through entrepreneurs, who are absolutely critical to our recovery and making it sustainable. And as I say, I'll happily take questions in a few moments about my own role in it, but I think there are certain things that we've now got to do, and I think we're beginning to do. One is making sure that we use the resources of government properly, and we're having to manage a budget, we're having to make cuts, we're having to get the government finances in order, but within that, to concentrate our resources on skill training, where Britain has fallen down badly in the past. Many of you who run companies will know that there may be large numbers of people unemployed, but it's often very difficult to get proper skills. So we've got to concentrate on skill training and apprenticeships and higher level skills. And we've also got to concentrate on supporting science and innovation, because that's actually where as a country we have a future in the knowledge economy. And I particularly emphasize manufacturing. It was allowed to decline very substantially, but I think still has a significant future, which is why I talk about industrial strategy and trying to recreate many of those successful firms and industries. But I think more fundamental even than those is actually creating an environment in which people want to set up a company and do it well and make money if they're successful, to create a tax environment and a regulatory environment in which those things can happen. And I know this is what many of you are doing, and we just had a very good description from Peter and others about how you do it and what are the drivers that make that happen. But I want in my job to try to help create a country in which that flourishes. So with those words, and with thanks again to you as a community as well as individuals, thank you very much for having me here and celebrating this week with you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending this evening's event. Thank you to the Secretary of State for Business, Innovation and Skills, the Right Honourable Vincent Cable, for speaking this evening and for being so gracious and taking questions. Thank you to the panel members for their participation. Thank you to Jay and his team, as well as the team here at Ernst Young, who've worked very hard to make this event a success.